What's up, y'all? How are we doing? Uh, why am I talking about the Detroit Pistons, even though I have them as the visiting team in this video against Oklahoma City? That's not your business. But let's talk about them because, yes, I'm going to talk about them in my Eastern Conference Outlook video later on this month, or probably I might push it back to like the beginning of April, if anything. But I just want to talk about them here because their story has been trending, especially to one Cade Cunningham. I'm sure all of y'all have seen the play, but if you guys have not, I'm not going to showcase it here. Y'all can just type up Cade Cunningham injury versus the Wizards. But basically what happened was the Pistons were playing the Washington Wizards a couple days ago. Cade was diving for a loose ball, and then Trey Johnson, I believe it was, collided with Cade, and Cade was on the nasty end, or was on the worst end of that fall, or however you say it. He was on a very bad receiving end on that fall, and Cade left that game, interestingly enough, with back spasms. And now I'm watching a doctor's vid right now where he also includes a screenshot of the Pistons medical update where it says that Cade has been diagnosed with left lung pneumothorax, which is basically a fancy way of saying collapsed lung. Now, there is some optimism by the Pistons that Cade will return just shy of the playoffs, but there have been a lot of concerns with the Detroit Pistons as of late, where they have lost 4 games in a row. I will talk about it in my Eastern Conference Outlook video. There was a stretch where the Pistons have lost 4 games in a row, and it kind of follows a dangerous pattern here because we saw that with last year's Cleveland Cavaliers, where they were the supposed best team in the NBA, or at least they were for a little bit, and then Oklahoma City took over, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and then by the time it was the second round, they got waxed by the Indiana Pacers, and that series was not even close outside of like 1 to 2 games. You know what I'm saying? So there is a dangerous trend right here for the Detroit Pistons. As far as Cade goes, it sounds like it's not as bad as people made it sound. Obviously, a collapsed lung, like it ain't nothing to sneeze at. But in Cade's case, and there is an article where a doctor explains that, these dudes in the NBA, and to an extent the NFL and the MLB as well, like these dudes' lung capacity is absolutely extraordinary, and they can bounce back very fast as long as it doesn't come with complications with things like heart issues. If you guys are in the medical field watching this video, you guys give me your thoughts and your take on Cade's collapsed lung, and let me know what y'all think, because I am no medical expert. I have friends that are, but if you are and you're watching this video, just give me your thoughts on the whole Cade Cunningham collapsed lung injury and how much time he's going to have to miss, pretty much. That's all I'm trying to say. But going back to the Pistons, though, as I was just alluding to, there have been a lot of highlighted concerns with the Detroit Pistons, mainly for the fact that they do not have another reliable shooter. Duncan Robinson is their only legit three-point threat out there. In fact, he is the only guy that can shoot threes at a consistent rate. In fact, I think I discussed it in one of my previous vids talking about the Detroit Pistons. Duncan Robinson has taken like 7 threes a game this year at max. And that's not necessarily a shot at guys like Dennis Jenkins, Cade Cunningham, Tobias Harris, and Karis LeVert. Those guys can shoot threes, but those guys are not primarily three-point shooters. And one of the things that will kill Detroit in the playoffs, in my personal opinion, is their lack of shooting. Whereas when it comes to a player like Cade Cunningham, Cade, again, he can shoot threes, but that's not primarily his game. Cade is a playmaking slasher to a mid-range shooter from the elbow. Tobias Harris is kind of the same thing. Tobias can shoot threes, but he's more so of a face-up four, where he's more effective with his back to the basket or getting into his patented mid-range shot as well. And to provide even more context, y'all, the Detroit Pistons are number 20th in the league in three-point shooting. They are better than teams like the Utah Jazz, the Indiana Pacers, the New Orleans Pelicans, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Toronto Raptors, and they are worse than the Washington Wizards, the Golden State Warriors, and the Memphis Grizzlies. And let me explain why this matters. Toronto is a good team. They're going to be in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to make it that far. The Philadelphia 76ers suck. Even with Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid, they're not going to have enough to make it as far as people had hoped, and they kind of stink right now. And I kind of predicted that. Oh, I was right again. Philly's not contenders, man. And then the Jazz, the Pacers, and the Pelicans are all tanking for that high lottery pick. Washington, the same thing. Memphis, the same thing. And then Golden State just sucks. And the Pistons defense took a step back as well. During their start, when they went 40-13 to begin the year, their defense was one of the best defenses in the league, along with teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Boston Celtics. For some context, they allowed 108.3 points per 100 possessions, but they have been 9-6 since the All-Star break. And Detroit's defense, while it's still a pretty solid defense, their defense has allowed 112 possessions, 112.1 points per 100 possessions, which that is a difference. It is a big 4-point differential, and sometimes those type of differentials, it definitely can have a negative effect on a team's defense going forward, unless, they step up on the defensive side of the ball during the playoffs, because we've seen teams take the Denver Nuggets, for example, in 2023. They were a middle-of-the-pack defensive team going into the 2023 playoffs, but they ultimately stepped up their defense. They beat the Minnesota Timberwolves. They beat the Phoenix Suns with Booker and KD and Chris Paul. And then they beat the Lakers with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, stunning the whole NBA world that year. And then they end up winning against the Miami Heat in the finals. And they were pretty middle of the pack when it comes to three-point shooting too that year. But the difference between that Nuggets team that won that year versus this Pistons team is that the Pistons do not have a Nikola Jokic. They have a Jalen Duren who's really, really good. I mean, in that Pistons game, he had, 34 and 15 rebounds, and he's a first-time All-Star this year. He is an excellent center. Cade is a great player, but none of those guys are Jamal Murray nor Nikola Jokic because, those guys are proven champions. Well, Jamal is, but Joker is a freaking unicorn who could just do everything as a 7-foot center. Another thing that will hinder the Pistons going forward is the over-reliance on Cade Cunningham running the offense. Obviously, a lot of the greater teams have run their offenses through their best player. I mean, the prime Golden State Warriors ran their offense through Steph Curry, but at the same time, their offense was very versatile because it helps that you have guys like Klay Thompson, and then Draymond Green handling the ball allowed Steph to play off the ball as well. And then you had other guys coming off the bench to spell Steph minutes like Sean Livingston. Andre Iguodala comes in for a few minutes and gives you some solid production. The Detroit Pistons do not have that type of roster, nor they have the luxury to have Cade get away with being such a high usage rate guy. And to an extent, that's understandable. Let's look at the Indiana Pacers, for example. They didn't have Tyrese Halliburton for the whole entire year because Tyrese injured his Achilles in the finals against Oklahoma City last year. And obviously, with the player that Tyrese is, it makes sense why the Indiana Pacers sucked without him. And that's why they got a guy like Ivica Zubac, because with the stuff he was able to do next to James Harden and guys like Lou Williams and Reggie Jackson, he could definitely thrive with a guy like Tyrese Halliburton's playmaking. But that's not the point. The point is, with Tyrese being out, Tyrese was their whole offense, and they had to run their offense through guys like Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith and Benedict Mathurin before they traded him for Ivica Zubac. My point being is that when you have a player like that, whose system is very dependent on their playmaking ability and skill, it would make perfect sense on why the Pacers suck this year and why I do think the Pistons are going to really struggle without Cade. But the main difference between the Pistons and the Pacers, at least last year's Pacers, was that the Pacers didn't really suck in the playoffs. And again, they forced a Game 7 against the best team in the NBA, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Why? Because they had a lot of guys around them that can not only shoot, but that can also play make outside of Tyrese Halliburton. You had guys like Andrew Nembhard, like I mentioned. Pascal Siakam is a great player. He can score, he can get his own buckets at his own time, right? And you had a guy like Miles Turner who could space the floor, and he was a game changer with his defense and his block shots. Aaron Nesmith, good 3-and-D guy. I mentioned Benedict Mathurin getting buckets off the bench. The Pistons do not have those type of players either. Yes, they have Tobias Harris, but let's face it, he ain't Pascal Siakam. Yes, they have Ausar Thompson, but he ain't Andrew Nembhard nor Aaron Nesmith. And Ausar is terrible at three-point shooting, just like his twin brother, who has to play point guard for the Rockets. I'm going to make my video about them and how cooked they are because of the fact that Amen, being Asar's twin brother, Amen's a good playmaker, but he can't be your main guy handling the ball, especially going into the playoffs. Again, that video is reserved for the Houston Rockets and the Houston Rockets only. I'm talking about the Detroit Pistons. Jalen Duren's good, but he ain't Miles Turner. He definitely ain't Pascal Siakam. And to highlight Cade's usage rate and how much of a concern it will be going into the playoffs, even when he comes back healthy, Cade Cunningham has a usage rate of 30.5% this season, meaning that the offense is basically very centered around Cade Cunningham, and their offensive success is determined by how much Cade Cunningham runs the offense. For some context, y'all, James Harden, when he was at the Houston Rockets for 9 seasons, he had a career usage percentage rate of 33.1%. Russell Westbrook's tenure with the Oklahoma City Thunder, he had a usage percentage of 32.5%. LeBron in his final season with the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2017-18, his usage percentage rate was 31.6, and Anthony Edwards this year is only he kind of has a higher, or he does have a higher usage rate percentage by 1%, and has a usage percentage rate of 31.5% this year. None of those guys I have mentioned outside of LeBron James, who won 3 championships before that season with the Cleveland Cavaliers, have won a championship. Anthony Edwards has not won a championship yet, and some people are doubting if he's ever going to win a championship. I understand that a guy like SGA this season has a usage rate of 33.1%, and I think Jaylen Brown has a pretty high usage rate as well. But the difference is that those two are champions, and number two, their systems are completely different from a system like the Detroit Pistons and the Minnesota Timberwolves, the LeBron system in Cleveland, the James Harden system with Houston and Brooklyn and the LA Clippers, and currently with the Cleveland Cavaliers as well, and then obviously his time in Philly, and then Russell Westbrook's system with Oklahoma City, and then Houston, and then all these other teams, right? So their systems are a lot different. And this is why I think team dynamics matter in this sense, because when it comes to guys like Cade, Ant, James, and Russ, their players around them were not good enough to help them win a championship, number one. And number two, the players around them were not good enough to help them get away with having such a high usage rate as opposed to SGA and Jaylen. And I have been saying, when I made my videos talking about the Detroit Pistons or mentioning the Detroit Pistons, whatever, what have you, I have said multiple times that they are going to make their roster better if they make a trade for a reliable 3-and-D guy or a guy that could shoot threes outside of Robinson, which is why I banged the drum for Klay Thompson, because Klay, yes, he's old, but he hasn't been that bad for the Detroit Pistons, the Dallas Mavericks this year. And I think a player of his services who has won championships, who has the experience to help lead Detroit in the playoffs, I think it would have went a long way for Detroit, especially with some of their guys only being in the playoffs for a second year in a row. Tobias Harris is probably their most experienced vet. Duncan Robinson's their most experienced vet because he's been to 2 finals as well. They needed a proven winner like Klay. KCP, same thing. And KCP's younger and he can still play defense, right? That's why I was scratching my head with the whole Jaden Ivey trade. I don't think trading Jaden Ivey is necessarily going to hurt them. It's who they got back that will, because Kevin Huerter, bruh, are we serious right now? Let me go on a little tangent here. When have you ever heard of a team that's serious about winning a championship and you hear these guys talk about, we're a pretty good team. You want to know who's going to make our team better? Kevin Huerter. You never heard nor said that. Come on, man. And that bum is not even getting any minutes by the Detroit Pistons, and he shouldn't. If you are a team that's serious about contending, you are not playing Kevin Huerter any significant minutes. I am sorry. That's well, I guess that is disrespect to Kevin Huerter, because once upon a time, he was an elite sniper, especially with Atlanta and Sacramento, but unfortunately, that was for naught as well. So, whatever, it is what it is. But my point being is that the Detroit Pistons are cooked, and I think Cade Cunningham's injury is going to highlight more problems for Detroit going forward, especially when Cade comes back. Because let me hit y'all with this before I let y'all go. In that Spurs game, and to an extent that Cavs game, but mainly the Spurs game, Mitch Johnson applied an excellent defensive strategy towards Cade Cunningham, which is what? Blitz the hell out of Cade, double him, or have a zone defense that is centered around him. Yes, Cade is a great playmaker. He got his assists, but if Cade is not giving you 20 to 30 every night, the Pistons are not going to stand a chance, especially when they apply that defense in the playoffs. Because I remember a few years ago, and it's happening with a guy like Kevin Durant right now, when Kevin was with Brooklyn and he was facing the Boston Celtics in the 2022 NBA playoffs, the Celtics with Ime Udoka back then, ironically, because it's ironic because he's watching that same strategy applied towards KD, even though he's the one that did it first. But my point is, Ime Udoka applied an excellent defensive strategy, which is blitz Kevin Durant every time he has the ball. Send the whole team at him, because we are not letting this joker beat us. If a guy like Bruce Brown's going to beat us, great. If Nico Claxton beats us, great. And it's the same thing with the Detroit Pistons. If Tobias Harris beats us, great. Duncan Robinson is not going to hurt us too much. Just don't let him get a hot hand. And we have to focus our defense on him. You know what I mean? And Jalen Duren can only score off of pick and rolls and lobs. You know what I mean? So, and Asar Thompson wasn't going to do much anyway. So basically, the Detroit Pistons are cooked. Their Cade-centric offense is in danger of getting exposed in the playoffs. And I think it's only going to be more evident with the amount of time that Cade will be out. And hopefully I'm proven wrong, because I do want to see Cade succeed in the playoffs. But I hope his time in the playoffs is not a cautionary tale for his career going forward, because so far it has been a cautionary tale with a guy like Anthony Edwards, especially with teams like Oklahoma City and San Antonio being better than the Minnesota Timberwolves right now. And in fact, my Lakers, who have won 8 in a row, beat Ant-Man, and Ant had probably one of the worst shooting nights of his career. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys think the Detroit Pistons are frauds or not? Do you guys think they're going to go far? More videos coming soon. Blah, 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 blah. You get the whole spiel. That's the end of this video. I'm X. Deuces.